Tom Moore joins us, Sixers beat writer for Calkins Media, the Bucks Counter Courier Times, and he says 4 games on Friday, Tom. How did the Sixers allow that to happen, and then on Monday have to say indefinitely?
I guess he scrimmaged on Thursday. Embiid did. He took part in the practice. So my guess is, I would think by Friday they would have known there was soreness and swelling, but maybe it was worse on Saturday. Maybe it was 2 days later. I don't know. But, for almost 4 weeks, they were saying 2 games at a time, 2 games at a time. So finally they came out last week and said, well, he'll be out for the next 4 games. They're targeting Friday's game against the Knicks for him to play. Well, that's, clearly not going to happen. And, with 24 games to go, you wonder, is he done for the season? There's certainly a chance, I would say.
Yeah, I guess that's really, everybody's knee-jerk reaction is, well, of course, you strung everybody along with Simmons all year until you finally announce him out. Is that the inevitable, in your opinion? Do you see where that's do you see this heading in that direction, that the inevitability is that they're going to come out and just say, look, there's not enough time for him?
I didn't see it before, but now I'm starting to wonder, if that'll be the case. Even if it's, let's say he's ready in 3 weeks. I have no idea, but let's say he's ready in 3 weeks. You only have 3 weeks left in the season at that point. Like 10 games or so, 11 games. I don't know what necessarily you need to. I could see on the other hand, if it had been Simmons and Simmons was ready to play for the last 10 games or whatever, I think that would have really benefited the Sixers and Simmons to do that. But because the last 2 scans showed that it wasn't properly healed, I understand why they did what they did. But with Embiid, I don't know really what you necessarily have to prove. You saw 31 games. You pretty much know what he can do. It's not like you're trying to get into the playoffs or anything like that. So, at a certain point, that may end up being, the result.
Tom, the optics are that they don't want to win. Does this strengthen that argument, or is it just a coincidence?
Yeah, I know it's a popular conspiracy theory, and I understand it. I think Embiid does want to play, and I think, in terms of the fans, clearly wanted to play, and I think the Sixers wouldn't mind if he played either. But it does look, I would say it looked worse when they kept saying he's out 2 games, he's out 2 games, he's out 2 games. And, he ended up missing, it's 13 now, tonight will be 14. And they never said more than 2 games until last week when they said he'd be out for 4 games. So, yeah, I understand why people say that, and you can certainly make a case.
Yeah, because it's interesting because when they brought Colangelo in, the thought of he's a basketball guy, he's got these great relationships around the league, he's well respected, and that's going to change the perception of the Sixers front office. Has that worked?
Well, he hasn't. The Ilyasova trade was a good trade getting him here. That was a good trade, but he wasn't able to deal Okafor, and you could argue that they traded Noel in part because they couldn't get what he wanted for Okafor, and didn't want to have 3 or 4 centers if you count Holmes the rest of the year. And I guess maybe I understand if somebody's going to throw $70 or $80 million over 4 years at him, that maybe you don't want to match that, especially since you're probably going to extend Embiid after this season, and that will be even more costly. But yeah. Some very interesting things going on, or not going on, shall we say.
It's almost like I equated it to Back to the Future, where Henke, was Marty, and he got the Gray Sports Almanac and had his own decision of what he wanted to do with it. And then Bryan Colangelo is old Biff, and he came in and stole it. And now we're in this alternate 1985 where Colangelo's like, you know what? This is my plan of what to do with your process. Your process of plan might have been something. So now we're kind of like off on this little, alternate area. And Colangelo's like, hey, I'm starting over. You did 3 years of stuff. Now I can do things. And you know what? I kind of liked what you were doing. I do want to be bad for one more season. Ha 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 ha.
Well, yeah, and some of the trades have, a lot of the trades have netted second-round picks, and that was Hinky's forte. He was stockpiling them for, I guess like doomsday or something, like it was a generator in the basement and a 5-gallon thing of water or something. I'm not really sure. But really, other than, like signing Gerald Henderson and the Ilyasova trade, there really haven't been a lot of differences in what Hinkie would have done here. Hinkie wouldn't have wouldn't have brought in veterans probably. He would have relied on young guys. So he wouldn't have gone that route. But a lot of the moves really have been Hinkie-type moves when you look at them.
Yeah, I think I can also – you said something there, Tom, that sticks out because Hinkie – I don't know that the Sixers win as many games as they do this year if Hinkie's in charge. They might just have had Embiid as kind of the ringleader, and I don't know that they win double the amount of games. So I think you give Colangelo a little bit of credit for the fact that they have doubled their win total.
Yeah, and no question, having Henderson with experience and Ilyasova really helped, especially the first 2 months, really helped them, to improve and made Brett Brown's life easier because they have, they have some experience and guys he can count on, as opposed to going to the bench and you have all these undrafted free agents, rookies, guys are just overmatched who probably won't be in the league next year. And not only are they on your team, they're starting or playing or playing regular minutes. So that definitely has been a change. But, big picture going forward, they need to move Okafor, whether it, I guess the idea is now maybe try to do it to draft and combine it with a pick or whatever, because he just doesn't fit here, with what they're doing in terms of, athletic, running the floor, and then also, just not being a interior defensive factor, which you're going to need next to Dario Saric.
Tom Moore with us, talking Sixers basketball. Tom, what's the update on Ben Simmons, and what does it mean for his future? Colangelo mentioned Summer League.
Yeah, in the release today with Embiid, he had a quote-unquote minor procedure in which there was something injected into the area to try to stimulate, growth and progress there, and that he's expected to begin rehab later this week. I don't know if that means that, it's a new thing, or if it's just something that they normally do to try to, make the process, speed the process up, if you will. He did say Friday about playing in the Summer League, but again, if he's healthy, I could see that happening. But if there's an issue or there's any question, I think they've shown, they're going to take the cautious way out. I tweeted something and had something in my article the other day. This is the 5th straight year that a key young 6'10" guy or bigger has missed an entire season for the Sixers, starting with Bynum, and then you had Noel, Embiid, and now Simmons.
Let's go bowling.
or dancing at the Meek Mill show.
One or the other. You look at the trade with Noel. Anderson hasn't really played much, but is it kind of an insight to the kind of players they're trying to find to put around Embiid and Simmons, like, defensive-minded guys whose offensive game could come down the road? I mean, is that something that kind of stands out about that deal, or is that just, like he said, I'm not going to make a bad deal, but this was the best deal I could make? Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I think, if he committed to trading Noel, you're not going to get an impact player or a first rounder. And let's face it, the top 18 protected for a team that went into the weekend with the 7th worst record in the league, you have almost no chance. I mean, Dallas would have to go like 24-2 to have any shot, to get that. And that's not happening. So it's a second rounder in 17 and a second rounder in 2020 is what you're going to get. Anderson is, an athletic, defensive-minded 3, and he's on his second year of a rookie contract. It's reasonable. He was a late first-round pick, so he's only owed like a little over $1 million a year. He can play this system, not a real good shooter, which you're going to need to surround with Ben Simmons. But I guess you hope that he's a rotation player. Maybe, between he and Covington, you can handle that position if you don't get another 3 in the draft or trade or free agency next year, perhaps something like that. And if not, his salary is very reasonable that you could include him in another trade or whatever.
Tom, it seems to me that the hardest thing to do in the NBA is to accurately evaluate talent or be a good talent evaluator and find quote-unquote hidden gems. How much did Richaun Holmes' presence make them feel more comfortable then in moving Noel?
Well, I think certainly for the rest of the season. I mean, he had a great game on Friday, not as good Saturday. Former Sixers general manager John Nash used to have a theory like your top 3 guys will play really well home and on the road, But then when you get more of the fringe rotation guys, they tend to be a lot better at home, just comfort, familiarity, and so on. And I think Holmes is one of those guys where he's more of a factor, here than he is there. But, that he's young, that he also has a really favorable contract, making about $1 million a year, allows you to at least get through the season. I mean, they only have 2 healthy centers on the roster right now, and they have 1 power forward in Saric. So when they buy out a Bogut, which I would assume would happen pretty soon, I could see them maybe calling up Webb from the D League, just to have another body who can play that position naturally instead of trying to move Holmes over there or Robert Covington, who's really a 3, have him play the 4 or cobble together, some lineup. Sarge, is going to be playing 35 minutes a game, which is not a bad thing to see if this is a role that he can handle.
Yeah, and I was talking before you came on, Tom, about the 6 people keep saying how many years you got to be in the top of the draft and how many times, and you draft guys and you're trading them away. If you draft 6 players and half of them turn out to be impactful players, you did pretty good for yourself, right?
Yeah, and in this day and age, really, it's the best way to build, is through the draft. It's the easiest way, too, because then you have a salary control for 4 years. By that point, you have a pretty good idea what you think their value is, their worth, and you try to work it out. If you make a trade, like look at Bayless. He was probably going to be the starting point guard, play a little off the ball with Simmons or whatever. Played 3 games, ligament wrist issues, has been in a cast for 3 months, immobilized, just getting the cast off in the next week or so. That's the first year of his 3-year contract, out the door. So you need some luck and you need some good talent evaluators. But the more top 5 picks, the more chances it gets for you to get impact players that you can not only bring in here, but you have the best chance to re-sign because you can pay them more than anybody else.
Tom Moore, 76ers beat writer from Calkins Media, at T-Moore 76ers. They take on the Warriors. This was a great game at the Wells Fargo Center last year. It was like a Saturday or Sunday, 5 o'clock. It was a weird start time, but tonight, 7 o'clock, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Tom. Enjoy the game.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.